Hi, this is Big Bill Graham from Model Railroading Live, the number one model railroading show in the entire universe. Tonight is not Who's Big Bill Talking To. This is a totally different forum here tonight, totally different show we hope to have with you. We have a special presentator that's going to come in and do the show. I'm going to be the moderator, checking out questions and asking questions, and so. Who's Big Bill Talking To will resume in a couple of weeks. I do want to first off apologize. I've been out of service for about the last month. I hurt my back. I threw my back out. I'm able to sit now. I'm a little discomfort, but nothing bad that I can't handle. But I want to just let you guys know we haven't totally disappeared from the face of the earth or from the YouTube channel. Just that I got injured and I've been out. So this is really my first foray back in to doing this and with Mr. Baronic, the track planner. And I'll be with him in a minute. But I wanted to point out that we have Johnny's Train Talk Show, which will air tomorrow night, Thursday, on the 20th at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you guys want to be a part, John, I just want to explain some things here. And if you guys are out there, listening, I know it's early and everything, but guys aren't resuming maybe when you watch it on the rebroadcast. But Johnny's Train Talk Show has a chat thing where you guys can come in. If you have a camera on your, on your computer or something, camera to visit, you can join in. And we really encourage you to join in. I know you don't have to put your face. You can block it out if you want. But I think it's more enjoyable when you join in because then you're able to get, you can ask questions and you sometimes can answer questions as well. We also have the Q&A with Johnny's Train Talk Show, and you can be a part of that as well. It's basically like walking down to the country store with John. It's a good old boy from the South in Georgia. You walk down to Johnny's Train Talk Show, into the country store, pull up a chair, grab a cold one out of the cooler and sit and talk. And if you have a problem with something trains, DC electrical, you want to ask questions about weathering, you want anything that's dealing with model railroad, you can ask. It will be answered. If it won't be answered, we'll get back to you. We definitely will. And then we have that's Johnny's Train Talk Show that's going to air tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then we have the Railroad Empire Show. That will be back on February 19th. I hope you guys watched it. You can watch the replay. They were doing scenery. I'm sorry. Please excuse me. Say that fast 3 times. That's because I'm talking too fast. That's the New Yorker in me. Anyway. They did scenery, and it was a good video. Andy and Robert, both on their layer. It was a pre-recorded. It's about 30 minutes. It ain't going to take much of your time up, but it's worth watching. I'm telling you right now, it's worth watching. So, do yourself a favor and go check it out. Now, let's see. Who do we? Let's say hello to the characters here. We got the Closet Branches in here. Pirates of the Model Trains. Mickey Collins is here. John Arthur. Hey, John. Lynn McCurdy. Ken Pryor. Robert Holman. Rob's here. Good. Hey, Rob. CV Railroad. And H.O. Scale is here. Mike Becker. He's my first time on your live show. How are you? Well, Mike, I'm well. How are you? In the comments below, how did you come to hear about us? I'd like to know. Let's see. Hey, Mike, are you into model railroading? Do you have a model railroad layout? Let me know. Yeah, we do have links for these shows. We do. We're on Facebook and YouTube under Model Railroading Live. Bill says good evening. Dwight of Northern Star, yes, and Andy and Robert, how are you? Wigwag Workshop is how you doing, Bill? Brad Anderson, Model Railroad. M&M Rails. Hey, Bill. How you doing? Good. Where is the gentleman? Grandpa Rails. Yeah. Let's see. I just had him. Freddie Model is here. Railroad is here. Let's see. Just so you guys for tuning in. Mike Becker and the rest of you guys joining in. Brad Anderson, Model Railroad Down Under. Yeah, good day, Bill and all. How are you today? Good. Ken Amos is here. Late Night Model Railroad is here. Grandpa Rails is here. And for the gentleman that came on, man, I just lost you. And I got the memory of a gnat. I'm telling you. We'll get to our guest in a minute. I just want to. Oh man, where are we? Eminem. Well, just so that you, Andy Crawford's here. That's good. Listen, the guy who just came in, what's it? Mike Becker. I'm sorry, Michael. I'm going to write your name down, Mike. And Mike Becker, you do model railroading. This is for all you guys out there. If you guys want to, here's this. Midwest Model Railroad Hobby Shop does not sponsor us. I wish they did, but they don't, which is all right. But if you guys write this down, SBKRR, and you go order some stuff from Midwest Model Railroad Hobby Shop and put that in, that code, the coupon code in, you'll get a 5% discount. That's our gift from me and Model Railroading Live to you guys. So it's SBKRR. Get a 5% discount on anything you order from Midwest Model Railroads. You should order from them anyway, as John Arthur says. It's absolutely correct. And, one more. My Hallelujah, and Annie wants to say hello. Say hello. It's my new mascot. Anyway, without further ado, tonight's show is dedicated. We're going to start this show. It's right now. It's in the process of. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to bring him on. Then I got to read something. This show is going to be with Bill Baronic, the track planner. Those that don't know him, he designs model railroad tracks. If you have a plan, if you have a dream, if you want your to be model railroad to be designed, he's the man to do it. Okay, but he's going to come on, and tonight's show is titled "What's the Track Planner Working On?" So, without further ado, let's bring Mr. Baronic in. Hey, Bill.
Hey, Bill.
How are you?
Too many Bills here in the room.
Well, we'll call you Mr. Baronic.
No, don't do that.
I'm not worthy of that title.
Please don't do that.
Anyway, before we get started, I wanted to read something, and I had it folded in the magazine. I got a news magazine. I subscribe to a news magazine called World. It's a news magazine that comes out about once every 2 weeks, and it has a column, where they do different news stories and stuff. But I saw it came today in the mail, and I wanted to read this. He says it's entitled. It's really short. Simon's Big Secret. For months, Simon George of Wakefield in northern England hid a truth about himself from his girlfriend Maria. The secret? He is a model railroader with big ticket taste. 8 years ago, George started collecting photographs to recreate a rail station from his childhood. He rented out the basement of a local business to construct what would eventually become a 200-foot-long model that cost him more than $330,000. Rather than admit to the expensive hobby, he lied to his girlfriend. I kind of led her to believe I was a wine merchant because that sounded cooler than building a model railroad. He told the BBC, according to George, Maria discovered the trains when she went in to what she thought was his wine cellar. George said the woman was actually impressed by the detailed model, and the two are now engaged. George's trains were on display in Wakefield in an exhibition at the end of December. So what's the moral of this story? Don't hide it. Tell them about it. I thought that was pretty cool. Anyway, Bill, let's get back. So, Bill, the question begs, what is the track planner working on?
What we want to do here, Bill, or what we're going to try is I've got 2 shows in the can already, as they say. This one you'll see tonight, and then I'm working on a 3rd one. I thought it would be kind of interesting for the people to kind of see how these track plans evolve from the initial contact with the client to going through with the client numerous contacts about what does the client want, to me conceptualizing a track plan to actually designing the track plan in software, getting it finished, and then the reason I think this is going to work, some of my clients have been very good about sending me pictures of the layout I designed being built. Because one thing that I never know for sure is how many of these ever really get built and how many of them get completely finished. I don't know, because a lot of times I lose contact, but there's a few people that do contact me, and I keep in touch with them, and they're very kind about sending pictures to me. So I thought, well, what the heck? Let's just do a show where we'll kind of how do we design it, how do we conceptualize it, and then here's what the owner is building. Here's how he's building it. So tonight's show is going to be, the first one's going to be I think relatively simple. It's a shelf switching layout that I designed for a customer in New Zealand, of all places, there. And it turned out really well. And the gentleman is doing an absolute fabulous job of building it. Even though it's a very simple shelf layout, he's very meticulous in what he's doing. You'll see pictures of that as we go through. So that's the bottom line, Bill.
Okay. For some of us out here in the Q&A and in the community itself, give us a little bit of a background of yourself. Like, how did you first get into doing track plans? And
yeah, I have a bio on the presentation.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That kind of describes some of that. I can give you all who I'll mention the name here because he was the first one I designed one for, Derek Glass. Everybody,
Okay.
I'm sure most people listening to the show tonight know who Derek is. A number of years ago, I think it was probably about 2012, 2013, maybe in that area there. I was watching Derek's videos, and he was building a layout, and then he was increasing the size, and then he was increasing it again. And then all of a sudden he's complaining a little bit on the video that he's not happy with it. So I contacted Derek, and I says, Derek, I designed model railroads as a hobby. I says, you're getting pretty frustrated here. Without charge, I says, would you be interested in having me design a layout that would fit your room? And of course, Derek didn't know who the heck I was at that point. And he says, well, if you're not going to charge me and you want to waste your time, go ahead. So he sent me the measurements of the room and everything. I sat down, and it took me maybe a day or 2 days to come up with this design I came up with. And I sent it to him. And I says, if you like it, fine. If you don't like it, don't worry about it. It didn't cost you anything. And Derek, he called me on the phone, and he goes, Bill. And I says, yeah, this is Derek. And I says, hi, Derek. And all the next words out of his mouth was, damn you. I says, what happened? He says, I would have never thought of doing it that way. He says, and he had told me earlier when we first talked, he says, I don't want to tear down my layout. And I says, well, let me just design something based on if you had a blank room, then you decide. Well, today, the layout you see when Derek does these videos was the one that I designed, and we've improved upon it. Derek's made some changes to it, but that was number one. That was the first one I did. And then I did a number of them without charge to see if my idea would work. And lo and behold, here we are 8 years later, and I'm charging, I'm not as expensive as some of the quote big names out there, but it's still, I do charge a fair amount of money to do this. And what's happened to this business is the higher I raise my prices, the more track plans I design, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. But I've raised my prices 3 times, and each time I've gotten more business.
Dwight at Northern Star, before we go on with the rest of the presentation and the show, wants to know, does Mr. Baronic ever do a design a switching layout?
The one he's going to see tonight is exactly what it is.
There we go.
This is a switching layout. What we'll be showing here is the different phases of the design and how we got to the final product and that. And I think what we should do too, Bill, you and I discussed this earlier. If we come up with questions like this during the show, just stop me because I keep talking.
I'm about to stop you now. Human City Junction. Hello, Heath. He's a fellow New Yorker. He lives up on the west side of Manhattan. His question to you is, what do you think about all the new people coming into the track planning business?
Well, to be honest with you, I didn't know there were that many of them there. Just a quick side story here. When I started doing it, quote, professionally in 2014, about 6 or 7 months into it, I was contacted by James Adams at Affordable Model Railroads. James builds layouts for high net worth individuals mostly, and he hired me to work for him. I do it on a contract basis. I do about 60 or 70% of his designs now. But at the time, James and I had a spirited, let's put it that way, a spirited conversation about what I was charging. And because I just got into the business, and James told me that I wasn't charging enough. I'm pretty good at what I do, he told me. And he says, if you don't raise your prices, you're going to cause the rest of us to lower our prices. And I didn't think that was true, but as I found out, designing a track plan is the easy part. Dealing with the clients in 60 and 70 and 80 emails is the problem. So that's why I charge more. It's not to design it. It's the hours and hours you spend dealing with the clients on this.
Yes.
I don't. James told me, he said, what you have to understand, there's not a lot of us out here that do this professional. There's a number of us, but not a lot. The people that are doing it for free, I know who a couple of them are. It's not that I'm totally blind on this, and I've seen them. They're okay, but they make some what I consider to be kind of rookie mistakes. That'll happen, and that just happens. People learn, and that.
Yeah.
If they're not charging for it, nobody can complain. If you're going to pay somebody, then it's a different ballgame.
I think that's excellent. I am truly. I have to say that I am one of the recipients of your track planning sketches, little thing you put together, little drawing that you put together that I am now sitting in and amongst. And that's, if you can see it up there, that's the original track plan. It has changed, but I will say this about Mr. Baranek, the track planner, that, and I think this is for all you guys out there as well. We're going to start doing the presentation momentarily, but just so that you know, Mr. Baranek is not offstandish. You know, he's if you're doing a layout and you're building a layout, and let's say you go to Mr. Baranek and it turns out that you can't afford what he's offering you, that's fine. Mr. Baranek is certainly not going to be upset by that, but that doesn't end there. Mr. Baranek will be willing to help you and give you ideas and what you're doing. If you went back to him and asked him, I always say there's 299 questions he'll answer for free. The 300th question is the one he's got to start charging for. So basically, you can go to him and say, hey, I have this problem. I'm trying to fit this in. And he'll give you an answer to it. If he can't, he'll tell you truthfully.
They may not always like the answer I give them too, Bill.
This is very true. This is very true. Oh. And, Robert Holloman says, what's the key differences between an amateur and a professional layout design?
Professionals charge, amateurs don't charge for it.
There you go. But cha-ching! Cha-ching!
There.
Honolulu Andy says cha-ching!
No, it's a little more involved in that. I don't want to, again, I know a couple of guys that do it without charge, and that's perfectly fine. One of them has done 3 layouts for people I know and 2 of those people have hired me after they got the free one. And that's probably enough said right there.
John Arthur wants to know, how many layouts did you design for free before you went pro?
18 months worth at an average of about probably 2 a month. So about 3 dozen. Well, what happened there, so to make that so it makes sense, my father, who barely had a high school education, but he was one of the smartest businessmen I've ever known, and he was my boss for a few years. He told me, if you have an idea and you have something that you think is worthwhile, first thing you do is give it away for a period of time, and your customers, your clients will tell you if it's worthwhile or not. So what I did is for 18 months, I was doing free track plans back. And this is 2012, 2013, approximately, in that area there. I became besieged with the word got out on YouTube, obviously, that what I was doing. And all of a sudden I became besieged with requests. And that was the point where I knew it would work, and I had to make the decision. Do I quit doing it? Because I couldn't continue to do it, because I would have had to start turning people down. I knew if I started charging for it, we were going to weed out a certain number of people, obviously. So at the time, my wife was alive, and her and I had a kind of a come to Jesus meeting. And she really didn't want me to do it, because I always remember this. She said to me, she says, when I went to her and I says, this design business I'm doing here is kind of taking off a little bigger than I really planned on doing it. I think I'm going to have to charge to do this to kind of slow it down. And she said to me, she says, well, that's fine. And her health was good at that time. She says, that's fine, but we retired early so we could travel and do things that I want to do. If this track planning business gets in the way of what I want to do, she says, no, I don't want you to do it, she says. And she says, I've been married to you. At that time, we were married 45 years there. She says, I've been married to you for 45 years. And one of your problems is, and she very bluntly said to me, you don't do things half-assed. Mm-hmm. And she says, you'll start this and you'll get wrapped up in it. And she says, all of a sudden it'll become a business just like the one you ran for 30 years.
Right.
And guess what? She's right.
Yeah. Well, it's true. I
spend on average about from 7 to 9 hours a day just designing track plans every day, 7 days a week. That's how busy I am.
We have one more question, and then we'll launch right into the presentation of the show. Robert Holloman, he says, I've considered going into business, doing designing layouts, but I'm not very confident in my track plans.
Well,
what kind of advice would you give them for that?
Your clients will tell you, we'll let you know pretty quickly. What I did, and it's, again, I might have a slide in this presentation that describes this. I found a niche, Robert, where I primarily design layouts that can be operated prototypically. And as I always tell my clients, I can design a rail fanning layout for you if that's what you want, but I can't convert that rail fanning layout into an operating layout that operates prototypically like the real railroads. But I can take and design a layout that operates prototypically, and you can use it as a rail fanning layout. That can be done. So my niche is for people that are interested in operations. Again, I'm 75 years old. I remember way before DCC. And when DCC came along, that is the biggest change in model railroading ever, because all of a sudden we went from flipping switches to run trains on the fascia to running trains like a real railroad. And as soon as that happened, I knew at that point that all of a sudden you could design track plans that operate and function like a real railroad. And that's my primary. Do I do rail fanning layouts? Yeah, I do them for people, but that's not my main business. My main business is people that are into operations and want to operate.
So let's get on to see what the track planner is working on.
So I should bring up the program now, Bill. Is that correct?
By all means, go right ahead.
We'll get into it here. Can everybody see it?
I can't.
I've got it up on my screen.
Do you have it under share?
No, I should do share, shouldn't I?
That's all right.
Okay. Share screen. Let's bring her up. Can we see it now?
No.
Okay.
I can't. Can anybody out there see it? Bill says no. Mojave Valley Model Railroad is in the house. Tina, how are you? I read on Facebook where HOAs are not good. I agree with you totally. And I feel for you. Get out of there.
Yeah, I agree.
Now we can see it. Now I can see it. Yes, now
okay.
I can see it.
We're in business, folks. We're going to be cooking with gas here now.
Here we go. Let's light that fire to the dry grass, girl.
That's right. I want to do one thing with my pointer here. Make sure it stays on all the time.
Okay.
Now we're good. Okay.
Now we're cooking with gasoline.
All right. What's the track planner working on? Well, let's get started. The purpose of the program is this: to give insight in how I take a client's vision, dream, and make it a reality using research, conceptualization, and my 30 years of experience doing this. There. So this is the purpose of the program. Here's my bio, which I've talked about a little bit. I was involved in a family business for over 35 years. My wife and I retired in April of 2001, and we moved out to northern Colorado, where I live now. I've designed track plans as a hobby for probably at least 30 years. They're just playing around, goofing around. Started doing it professionally in 2014. I've designed plans for 6 different countries. It's now 7 different countries because I just got an email over the weekend from a gentleman that lives in Malta, which is literally an island in the Mediterranean, apparently. And he's discussing with me about me designing a track plan for him. So of those 6 countries that I've done it for, I've done 2 in New Zealand, which is one of them you're going to see here tonight. Done 1 in Australia, 1 in Korea, 3 or 4 in the United Kingdom, half a dozen in Canada, many of them in the United States.
Bill, did you say Korea?
Yes, I did one for Korea.
Was that North or South?
That was South Korea.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it was South Korea. Well, matter of fact, I'll tell you, you know who it was at the time. It was Mike. Mike was living in Korea.
Oh, that's correct. Mike Phillips. Yes.
Yeah, Mike Phillips, and he had a small room.
That's right.
Where he lived, and he got permission from the landlord to be able to put a layout in that room.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, so that's my Korean one that I did.
Okay.
There. I also, as I said earlier, I contract with one of the premier layout builders here in the United States. And again, I do 60-70% of his designs for him there. And is he busy? Yeah, James right now is booked through the spring of 2023 to build layouts. That's how busy he is. And I write articles for a magazine called The Modeler's Journal. It's a free quarterly online magazine that I'll give you the information here in this next slide, and you're all welcome to subscribe to it. I do a article in there 4 times a year. It's called A Perspective on Track Planning, where I talk about different things about track planning and designing and that. But the magazine itself is much more than that. JD does a really good job with this magazine. It's not just about model railroading. It's about all types of modeling. One of the neatest articles that JD had in his magazine a year or two ago was a gentleman over in Europe that built castle dioramas, and they were gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous castles. And that was in one of the issues. That middle issue where you see the steel and steam, that boat there is over 50%, I think, maybe 60% made out of paper. There,
Wow.
it was an incredible model, and there's a whole story about it in the magazine. Bottom line here is, if you go to www.themodelersjournal.com, you can sign up for this magazine for free. It doesn't cost a thing. It'll come 4 times a year, and I'm very close friends with the editor, and I can absolutely, without question, guarantee you that any information you give to JD goes nowhere but stays with him. We don't sell the information. There's no ads in the magazine at all. And the issues will average anywhere from 50 to 70 pages long. So it's just not a little flyer. It's a full-fledged magazine. Mm-hmm. There. Okay. What's my business model? And this will answer some of the questions that the guys were asking there. Designing track plans. I try to design track plans that operate prototypically. That's number one. I try to design track plans that are interesting but not overly complicated to build. I do them for individuals whose previous layouts turned out to be less than optimal. Specifically, I tailor designs to the client's wants. That's an important thing. There is you can't always design what you like. You have to design what the client wants. Sometimes I don't agree, but they're paying me to do what they want me to do. And then I try to educate the clients on the benefits of designing and building an operating layout as opposed to a rail fanning layout. And again, I have nothing against rail fanning layouts. It's perfectly fine there. But I just think with the type of equipment you can buy today, DCC and all of those things combined, designing layouts that operate prototypically in my book is very important. I have 7 design elements that I try to abide by, kind of my Bible, so to speak, when I'm designing. First one is I like to design walk along main lines. I do not like to design layouts where you can stand in one place, do a 360-degree circle, and you've seen the whole layout. I try not to design that type of layout. I like narrow bench work. I don't like tennis table type tops on model railroads. So narrow bench work is important. Long mainline runs are also, to my mind, important. Trains traveling through scenes once. That's something that a lot of times people don't hear about. And I think it's very important to design a track plan where you actually get the feeling of trains going somewhere, coming from somewhere and going somewhere. And if you can get them to travel through a scene one time, that relays that feeling to people. I make use of peninsulas with view blocks. So again, you can't stand in one place and see the whole layout. You have to move around to be able to see it. I try to incorporate staging in every design I do. And again, the bottom one, we design for prototypical operations.
Now, Bill, do you use any rail?
That's coming up next, Billy.
I'm just, that ESPN I have ESPN,
You're doing great.
I have ESPN. But the reason why I asked that, because the ESPN kicked in, was Robert Holman wants to know, how do you get the color gradients in any rail?
Well, I've used any rail since version 3. And this sounds like I'm slapping myself on the back. And I really don't mean it, guys. I have learned to do things with any rail that even David that owns it, any rail that owns the company, didn't expect people to do with it. Any rail was designed. Let me click ahead here. See, Bill, how you were perceptive there?
That's that ESPN.
That is. There, AnyRail was designed for the modeler. It wasn't designed for the professional. I have Third Planet. I've used Third Planet. I found out that Third Planet is like using Excel, and I'm pretty good at using Excel, but I'm still probably only use about 20% of what Excel can do. This is what I found the problem with Third Planet was I was only using about 25% of what Third Planet would do. With AnyRail, I actually make suggestions to David that owns the company about ways to improve it. And some of my suggestions have been incorporated. Matter of fact, about 3 months ago, I wrote a letter to David because some of the guys like me that do it professionally that are messing around with AnyRail, I was talking to a couple of them, and we had come up with the idea of coming out of maybe David would design a program called AnyRail Pro, and it would have certain things in it that we as professionals would like to have that are not in the current AnyRail. I sent 11 or 12 requests to David and saying, I know some other people would be willing to pay 2 or 3 times the cost of the software to get these features. David has been very good to me to respond to me about the software. That's what I like about the program is David's very easy to get to, at least for me, and he's very responsive with his answers. And but within about 24 hours, he wrote me back with a very honest answer. And the honest answer was simply this. They're a very small software company. They don't have a lot of employees, and they wouldn't be able to support 2 versions of AnyRail. And he explained to me that COVID is basically the best thing that ever happened to AnyRail because they've sold more copies of AnyRail in the last 2 years than they have probably in the history of the company. There.
So how do you get the color gradient? Do you use the color gradient?
I use in AnyRail you can put in the hex numbers to change the colors. I hardly ever use the standard colors that AnyRail produces. If you click to one more screen in AnyRail, you can then put in numbers that will give you variances. I have a color chart that I use that has thousands upon thousands of colors with their hex numbers on them. And
where did you get that from?
Free online.
Oh, okay.
It's free online, and that's why when you'll see my AnyRail designs, they look different than anything that you would see if you went on AnyRail's website. And then that's I think, and again, I got to be careful what I say here because it sounds like I'm going to break my arm, slap on my back. I have figured out ways to use AnyRail that I don't think David even considered, because his clientele is not me, the professional. His clientele is the modeler that just wants to design a layout for his home there and that. And
right.
I pushed the envelope on AnyRail? Yeah, I really have. But I find it's easy to work with. Again, Third Planet, I probably know 20 or 25%. AnyRail, I probably know 80% or 85% of what AnyRail will do there. Okay, let's keep going. I have an online questionnaire on my website. It's about 24 questions, and anyone that contacts me that is thinking about having me design a track plan, I have them go to my website and I have them answer these 25 questions. And all this does for me is it lets me know what the thinking of the client is. What does the client want? How are they thinking? And I've even got some questions in here that are absolutely contradictory. And I do that on purpose because it sometimes tells me, the client will tell me one thing on one question, and then later he'll answer another question differently than that one before. And so then I know that maybe he's not 100% sure exactly what he does want to do. It's just little things like that. But this questionnaire that I have people fill out, this gives me a really good idea of where the client wants to go and what the client, what his wants and givens are. Okay, this client here for this particular job tonight, He lives in a town called Arrowtown, New Zealand, and it's in the what they call the South Island there. And I've talked to the gentleman. Oh, I bet we've probably had, in the course of designing this switching layout for him, I think we've probably had a dozen and a half or 24 phone conversations with him. Very nice guy. And then he's been very kind to send me pictures as he's been building the layout there. But this is one that came from New Zealand. What was his givens that he wanted? The locale had to be Midwestern Railroad in the United States, diesel era, prototypical switching. It was going to be a shelf layout that ran along 3 walls, and it was going to be a single level. So pretty simple layout when it's all said and done. There, not anything major. The space that the client had in New Zealand, I don't know this for sure. I've never been to New Zealand, but it appears that maybe some of the houses are not all that big over there. And what he had was a spare bedroom that was a small bedroom. This room measured 11.8 or 11 foot 8 inches by 11 foot 8 inches, or about 104 square feet. It had an in-swinging door in the lower right-hand corner, a wardrobe closet with sliding doors, and then a large window with curtains on the what would be drawing north wall. The benchwork that he wanted to build needed to be freestanding. He did not want to attach it to the walls. It had to be modular, and it had to be easily removable if he moved sometimes. So these were kind of some of the basic parameters that I was given.
Now, Bill, may I ask a question?
Sure.
In regards to your primary responsibility is to draw the track plan. You're not in your parameters as being the one giving. You've been contracted to do the track plan, but are you also contracted to do the design of the workbench, or is that left up to the customer?
Okay, that's a really good question that I always fail to not answer for people. I forget to tell people. In any rail, I could design the bench work. Any rail has the capability of doing that. The problem is 2 or 3 things. Number one, it takes probably 2 times as long to design the bench work as it actually does for me to design a track plan.
Okay.
Designing bench work is very, very labor intensive from a design standpoint. Number 2, why is it so time consuming? Because I can design L girder, I can design tabletop layouts, I can do all that. I understand all that. The problem is all of a sudden you've got cross members running across bench work. What happens if we put a switch where we need to put in a tortoise switch machine below it? Then I've got to allow for for those cross members. That's the simple stuff. Here's the hard part. I have no way, Bill, of knowing what the skill level is of my client on bench work.
Right. Okay. So you're just contracted to do the design of the track work.
I do it from the tabletop up.
Right.
Is what I do. I have a lot of information that I'm more than willing to share with people on how to build bench work, my own layout. I build it. I think I've done a real good job of building bench work on it, and that. And I've got probably 50 or 100 pictures of my bench work as I was building it, and I share that with a lot of my clients because it gives them good ideas on how to do bench work. So I totally understand everything, but I would have to charge probably triple what I charge if they want the bench work included. And this is probably why some of the guys do charge or do design bench work for people, but they're not charging what I'm charging.
Yeah.
Do it.
Okay.
Originally, we tried, and we abandoned this real early on. We tried to figure out, could we do a continuous running layout in this space and still maintain, live with the obstructions there. It didn't work, but here's what we tried. This was the plan we came up with, kind of a real simple try. What was wrong with this? there was lack of decent aisle width. Aisle widths were, in some cases, were 20 inches or less. That you can't have that. There was no space for staging. There was only minimal locations to put industries in. 22 inches was the minimum radius, and this gentleman wanted to run basically modern diesel equipment. So 22 inches wasn't going to work with modern diesels and that. The mainline run was way too short. The yard was way too big when you included the engine servicing facility and everything. And I built the lift out with a curved track, and you've got to be pretty good with your woodworking skills to be able to pull that off and that. And we just decided this was not going to work. So again, it got abandoned real early in the process. So we finally decided, and the client preferred that we do with the shelf layout. So one of the things that, as the people were asking, if I want to get into this, what's one of the concerns about it? Well, one of the concerns is the information that flows back and forth between you and the client. This is what the client sent me after we decided we were not going to try to do continuous running. And there was just a few simple things here. He wanted it to be U-shaped. He thought we would put a 3-track yard, a diamond-shaped yard in the center of the long wall. We would do Midwest industrial theme on it. Staging yards, this is an interesting thing. And I don't know if you folks can read it or not, but I wrote on here that staging was going to be on a detachable caddy. Well, in New Zealand, it's called attachable staging. There. So
okay. Human City Junction, Heath wants to know, was this gentleman totally committed to HO scale? He
Yes.
could do a lot more in his space and N scale.
No, yes, that's a good question, Heath. No, he was 100% fully committed to HO scale. There, I recommend that numerous times to clients. The magic number. This is kind of going off script here a little bit, but I think it's kind of important that people understand this. If you're doing an HO scale layout and you want to get the longest mainline run you can, the typical configuration would be around the walls with a center peninsula. If you're designing a layout of that nature with the center peninsula would have a turn back curve on it, things like that. The minimum, the absolute bare minimum that you need for room width to be able to design to run. And again, we're talking modern equipment here running. We're not talking 40s and 50s. There is, you need about 11 feet wide. I'm designing one now for a gentleman that lives in Washington. His room is 17 feet long, which is great, but it's only 9.5 feet wide. We tried to put a turn back peninsula in, absolutely did not work. I'm designing him around the wall layout with a stub ended peninsula in the middle. Mm-hmm. And that's going to work out pretty good. That's going to be fine. And that, but to answer Heath's question here, I would say that probably only 10% of the people that I suggest go to N scale as opposed to HO because of their space. About 10% of those people agree with me. About 90% of them stick with what they want there. So I suggest it all the time. Very, very seldom does it ever happen there.
Right.
To finish out on this track plan, on this picture, this slide, he thought we could put 5 industries on this plan there. And he kind of sent me a sample design that he kind of liked. That's what you see down at the bottom of the screen. This 5 industry situation, I want you to kind of keep that in the back of your mind, because that's kind of important as we go through this and we get to the finished product. So the bench work, and again, I don't do the bench work underneath. With this gentleman, I didn't have to, because you're going to see his bench work and you'll understand pretty quickly that he didn't need my help to do the bench work, the sub bench work. We came up, this is the general plan we came up with, 4 different modules, 3 three of them along two walls, and then that staging caddy that is detachable from it there. This became our basic idea. The construction that he did here was L girder construction, which I think is by far and away the best type of construction on bench work. You'll see his bench work here in a little bit. He done a fabulous job with it. He did something that I hadn't seen done before, but it actually turned out to be kind of neat. You'll see this in some pictures. He put a masonite backdrop on the back of this layout there, but he framed it inside of a frame. So it looks like a frame, and it really turned out looking good. I never thought about that before, but to make the overall look of the layout look clean and look nice, it really did look good. And one of his other main things was, because this is such a small room, he needed to have storage under the layout. So he designed it so that he could put storage underneath these modules. And as you'll see again, this turned out real good.
I have a question for you from where is it? I just had it and now I lost it. Let me get it. I think it's right here. Oh, Lynn McCurdy and the HDMMRC want to know, did you ever have clients or anyone who wanted to have an O-scale layout design?
Yeah, that's another good question. If you go to my website, it'll say on there that I do not design Lionel toy train layouts. I do design O-scale layouts.
Okay, there's a
or
different
high rail layouts. Ones where I can use flex track and turnouts and that. The problem, and I don't want to belittle toy train guys. Believe me, that's a huge sector of the hobby. The problem for me designing and building a toy train layout is it doesn't give me any. I'm not challenged by it because I sometimes have said it's like putting together an erector set. You got all these pieces of track that are set, and you got to get them all connected. And then when you're done, all you've done to a certain extent is build a bunch of loops so trains can run around in circles, and with maybe a crossover here or there or an elevation change. But I don't do toy train layouts. Absolutely, I do O-scale layouts, not O-gauge layouts. O-scale.
Okay.
Okay. Conceptualizing. This is probably the area that sets me apart from the people that are just designing their own layout for themselves. I'm able, once I get the measurements of a room and I get how the room is laid out, I know what the client wants. I know what the client is asking for. I'm pretty damn good at conceptualizing the space, how to use the space, how to best use the space that's available there. And I think one of the problems that I run into numerous times, I took architectural drawing when I was in school for a year or two, and I'm really good at visualizing things in working in a 2D environment, but visualizing things in 3D.
Right.
A lot of my clients cannot visualize in 3D. And that can be a problem if you can't do that. I can take an open space and I can look at it and say, yeah, I know what to do with that. I got a pretty good idea how to do that. Not everybody can do that. These were the concept givens that we were dealing with here on this particular layout. Prototypical operations. He wanted a mid-sized Midwestern town. He wanted Midwestern industries. He wanted an engine servicing facility, staging yards, and tried to make everything easy to reach there, which we were able to accomplish. Okay, now we're getting into the nitty-gritty here. This was my first concept that I drew him. Some of the interesting things. This area up here along the window, that's the caddy that's detachable from the rest of the railroad. I put an escape track in here because I thought we were going to he might run trains and he wanted to bring the train in and be able to get the engine to come back out. As you'll see later on here, we abandoned that process. I included here where I say run around tracks. runaround tracks are very important on a switching layout because it allows you to not get trapped and you can't do something. So whenever you're designing a shelf style layout, you have to be very cognizant of designing in runaround tracks so you can switch both ends of your train.
Right. Hey, Bill, just
Yeah.
you see on your screen
Uh-huh.
on the bottom where it says StreamYard.com and sharing your screen,
Yes.
and then you see the word hide.
Can I hide that?
Yes.
How's
There
that?
you go. I expect checks in the mail.
No problem. I
Not
can do
you,
that.
not you, to the guys on
Okay.
the because they were
So,
3 or 4 of them. So M&M Rails, you checks, money, cha-ching, baby, cha-ching. I heard you. I listened. I did. I came. I
thank you.
conquered. I saw.
You did good, Billy.
I did. It's at
Okay.
ESPN. Go ahead.
Now,
I'm sorry.
no, you're fine. That's perfectly fine. Here's a little trick that I use when I'm designing that I think is kind of an important one. You'll see the wording on the track plan. It says run through main line. And if you follow that main line from the staging caddy to the bottom of the layout, what you'll notice there is that main line goes straight through the layout. The main line does not diverge onto a diverging turnout. It runs straight through. And why do I do that? If I'm designing a layout that's continuous running and it's going to have this switching area, say like this has got, if you have a straight run through main line, you solve a lot of problems for yourself with derailments if your track work is not 100%.
Right.
With this original concept, the number one here, we were able to put on 6 industrial spurs onto this. He liked this. He was kind of happy with it, but I told him, I think we can do better. And he says, go for it. So this was number 1. This is number 2. Now, what did we do here?
Yeah.
We only changed one thing.
I can tell you what you did here. You put more fun in it. That's what you did.
Well, what we did is we added a long straight track close to the wall there. And then we were able to put background buildings along that wall there. And we literally, by adding that one piece of track and a couple crossovers, we literally doubled the number of industries this layout would have.
Right.
Just by this one simple little adjustment we made to the plan there. And everything else is kind of basically the same as it was before. I think I added maybe, let's go back here for a second. Yeah, I added an extra track in the center too. If you go back and forth, you can see there's an extra third track that's been added to this there. Okay, but this was the second one, and this one here got better. We were pretty much happy with this one here.
Mm-hmm.
And then I found a major mistake that I had made on this that wasn't a mistake. It just, I didn't think a good design. So what we did is we went with design number 3, which is really the final one. And what we did here, the most important things we did with this one are basically 3 things. We got rid of the escape track on the removable caddy up there. The reason we did that is we established an operating program for this thing, where an operating session and how it would operate. And our theory was that we would bring 3 trains onto the layout, and during the op session, 3 trains would go back off the layout, and that would end the operating session. You're technically running 6 trains there, but we didn't need to turn them there. They did not need to be turned. So we got rid of the escape track. Then my major mistake is I didn't leave enough room at the bottom to do some switching like he wanted to do. So we added an escape caddy to the bottom down there. That is, you'll see a picture of this built already done and everything, and but that is hinged, and it swings open as you come into the room, and that was a major addition that allowed the ability to switch the southern part of this track plan without any problems at all there. The third one was adding curved turnouts to improve operations and improve the track plan. And that's what I've got that arrow pointing to there. So
Right.
what you see here is the third rendition of this, and actually the final one. So there's all three of them as it evolved through the process. There you can see how the changes were made there. And
So that caddy, John Arthur wants to know, is a switch lead.
that's a switch lead. That's exactly right.
Right.
That's exactly what it is. If you look at concept number 2, without that, I had problems. I could only switch 1 or 2 cars at a time.
Human City Junction wants to know, are curved turnouts prototypical?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But what the railroad does, the real railroad, is they never build curves. They never build curved turnouts unless they have to. Railroads like to go straight. They don't like to curve.
Yeah.
And the only reason they curve is because they have to.
Yeah. True.
And what this is you'll see a picture of this when we get to like the last picture of the program here. I'll show you those curved turnouts, how they're put together and how he did this. That also made a major difference in switching this layout and how it was switching everything there. So going from concept 1 to concept 3 may not look like major changes, but all the changes made a big difference in the final track plan and how it all turned out there. Client input. This is something that if you're going to get into this business, you have to, 1, put up with, and it's very important that you do put up with it. As we were designing this layout, these are the kind of paperwork I got from this client there. These were the things that he was interested in and things he wanted changed and things that he wanted to have done differently. All of them were fine. The only thing that I question him a little bit about is he even got down to being concerned about 1/8 of an inch spacing between some tracks. Should we keep it at 2 1/4 or should we go to 2 3/8 spacing? This is and I had to explain to him that as long as he wasn't going to run any big boys or northerns on here, he wasn't going to have a problem there.
Heath has a question. He wants to know, excuse me, did you ever use set track or is it all flex? Do you recommend hand-built turnouts or commercially made? Which commercially made turnouts would you recommend?
Well, originally when I started all of this in 2014, I was designing track plans almost 100% using Walther's Code 83. Obviously, Walther's got in trouble. They lost their supplier, and we've been now almost 3 years without it. I now today do about 85 to 90% of my designs are using Pico Code 83 when we do HO there. And that I would go back. I will probably go back to Walther's when they finally get the supplies up where it's available to the public. Walther's, the problem with Pico is those where you see those curved turnouts on this particular slide I'm on. Pico, for whatever reason, and I don't understand it, makes one curved turnout. The outside run-through track has a radius of 60 inches. Mm-hmm. Now, how many home layouts can you put 60-inch radiuses on? Not a hell of a lot of them. The inside, the diverging track on the curve on Pico is 30-inch radius. Okay, I work with it. I learn how to put up with it and things like that. But in Walther's, when they get back to full production especially with their curved turnouts, they have 3 to 4 different curved turnouts and all different radiuses, and they have them in radiuses that are usable and functional.
Right.
And I think what he'll find out if he decides to start designing for people, curved turnouts are your friend. They're not your enemy, because curved turnouts, the two types of track pieces that that are a designer's best friend is curved turnouts and double slip switches. Double slip switches save you about 1.5 feet of space in a yard ladder. And
True, very true.
I use them quite often there. As far as hand laid ones, I use Fast Track primarily, and I love Fast Track turnouts because what any rail does is any rail designs their Fast Track turnouts in the minimum length they need to be to function.
Oh,
so that again helps from your designing, especially if you're designing yard ladders. If you can use that minimum length that Fast Track has, you can build very, very good, very functional yard ladders with those. So right now, today, as we're here today, Robert, I use Pico Code 83 for HO, and I use Fast Tracks for the turnouts there and that. So again, this shows you what how the client thinks through things. And actually, these changes that the client wanted, we did incorporate into the plan, and we did change them and that. And they actually worked out much better, and it made a better plan when it was all said and done.
Oh, okay.
Okay, here's the finished plan. Here's the finished product there. Remember earlier I said we thought we would get 5 industries on the layout.
Right.
We ended up having 13 places for industries.
Oh, sweet.
There. We were able to put in a full engine servicing facility with a building to work on the engines in, and a fuel servicing track there. We added that escape track caddy down at the bottom, which was very important. And the design of this layout, the train lengths are going to be between 10 and 12 cars long, which is really about the right size for this layout there. I get a lot of clients who say, I want to run 40 and 50 car trains, and they're using a small bedroom to build the layout. That's totally unprototypical and doesn't even look believable.
Right. You'll have the head of the train in town A, and the rear train will be in town C.
That's right. It's totally unbelievable, not prototypical. And on this layout, a 10 to 12 car train is just about the right size for the industrial spurs we've got, and primarily the runaround tracks where you're running around the train to get to the other end of it and that.
Yeah, Bill, on these industries, can you blow this picture up any to show us the industries?
I can try. Let's see here. Whoops, gotta go back. No, that didn't work.
All right, if you can go back to the picture, if you could just use.
I can go through them and tell.
Yeah, if you would.
Up at the top, we can start at the top and just work our way down. Gotta get my glasses on here. Sorry, guys.
That's all right.
That's the fuel and sand station. It's a Stewart product, and it's a 683-115, and it's slightly modified to fit this spot. The next one is the Pike Stuff single stall engine house. The next one is just assorted background buildings. I didn't pick out any specific ones. The next one is Central Gas and Supply. That's Walther's 933-3011. Then I've got more background structures. The next one is the salvage yard, and if you look at that somewhat closely, you'll see there's no buildings. All I've got is the yard. We didn't have room to put a building in or anything like that. But the client said that was okay with him. He was going to put a bunch of junk in there just to make it look like a scrap yard, and he just wanted a place to put a gondola.
Okay.
What he wanted. Again, the next one below that is more assorted background structures. The big industry in the corner is the Magic Pan Commercial Bakery. That's Walther's, and that number was 933-2915. The next one is a team track, and all that is just a dock with a angled part coming off of it, and that would be used, for example, a box car that was doing less than carload would drop off things there, and a truck would pick them up. Another thing it could be used for, a flat car with 3 or 4 or 5 tractors on it could be parked there, and the tractors could be offloaded onto that dock, drove down the dock, and then picked up by by something else to be moved. The building against the wall is just the ADM grain elevator with some extra silos added to it. That actually is the major industry on this layout. You'll see that as I talk about the trains that'll run on it there. So the grain elevator is the big industry on this layout. And then the other one is the Glacier Industrial Sand. That's another Walthers building, 933-4035 is what that is. So those are the buildings that are on there. Now, interesting thing, I think I should probably mention, all of these buildings that you see on here don't come with any rail. I have gotten good enough with any rail. I've designed all these buildings based on the information, the measurements and everything that Walthers gives, which sometimes is terrible, but I can usually figure it out. These are all buildings that I've built that are in my AnyRail objects library. And I'm probably approaching pretty close to 1,000 buildings.
Wow.
Of all different manufacturers. If somebody wants a building on their design and I don't have it, and I think it's one that I would probably use again, I take the time to actually design it and add it to my library. David that owns AnyRail, would like me to send these to him. He'd like me to send the hundreds and hundreds of them that I've got, because then they can be dispersed out to the public. I will not do that, because this is one of the things that separates me from someone else.
Right. Understandable.
Yeah. And I've spent way too much time designing all this stuff to be giving it away. That may be a little selfish, but that's the bottom line.
That's all right.
Now, 6 trains we can do in an op session here with this. So I put together an operating plan for him on this, and this might look a little complicated, but it's really very simple. The first 4 trains are just general manifest freight trains. They can have anything inside of them as far as cars would concern there. 2 of them would be what we call AM runs, and 2 of them would be afternoon runs. One will leave staging and go to the yard. Another one will leave the yard and go back to staging. The afternoon, one will come out of the staging, go to the yard. Later on, a general manifest will leave the yard and go back to staging there. Then we have the unit grain train that we put together. That takes up the 3rd track of that 3-track caddy that we have. And what that train does is a unit grain train. It leaves staging, it goes over to the grain elevator, it switches out cars in the grain elevator, and it returns back to staging. There. That's what that car does. And then I run 2 local switching runs. They originate in the yard, and they switch the various industries on the layout. I suggest when we do this, like on this layout, as I told the client, I would split the layout about in the middle, and I would take and have one run, like the AM run, handle the one half of the layout's industries. It would switch those. Later in the day, you run another one out of the yard that takes care of the other half of the layout.
Mm-hmm.
There. So here's a case of we can run 7 trains in an op session. And if you were doing this by yourself, which you could easily do, I think you'd have right in the area of about 3.5 to 4 hours worth of work here.
That's
nice. Even with just 7 trains running.
Yeah. Heath wants to know: do you design the DCC wiring for blocks, etc.?
I've been asked to do it. I've done it for the gentleman, for James, who owns Affordable Model Railroads, because he pays me very well to do that. Do I want to do it? No, I hate it.
Okay.
It's a major. It's not quite as bad as building the bench work, but it ain't that far off. It takes a lot of work and effort to do.
I got you.
And I fortunately I have some people that I can recommend that my clients get a hold of, who will give them the information that they need for
That's
that.
Good to know. That's good to know.
Okay, now what we're going to do here, folks, is we're going to look through this is not a big collection of photos. It's just a few of them here, but this is going to show you what happened after we got this design finished and actually the client starts to build it. So the first picture here is just an overview of the room standing by that door that opens up into the room. First thing you'll notice is the backdrop, how he framed that backdrop. I think that's a neat idea.
Yeah, it is.
It cleans it up. It makes it look like a finished product. What you see in front of you here is the caddy for the swing for the switching extension there. I've got 2 or 3 more pictures of that later on. You'll see some better pictures. But this is the room with the bench work done, completed. Now he's starting to put lay track on it there. But this is just kind of a general overview. This is one of my favorite pictures because I knew about this, but I've never done it. I think it's one of the neatest things you can do. If you look at the bench work where I've got the arrow pointed, he created kind of an I-beam. There is what he did. That board that you see that is facing out there, that's actually got 2 1x2s on top and bottom. So there's a channel that's created there. And what he's done on this, or what he's going to do on this, is all of the bus wires, all of the track feeders, and all of the terminal strips will sit in that channel there. The only time he'll have to get under the layout is when he puts the track feeder drops in, and he'll bring those to the front of the layout, and through a series of terminals, he'll hook it all up to the bus wires. That is a super smart way to do it there, because once you've got your drop feeders in and you've moved them to the front of the layout, you never have to get underneath the layout again.
Very true.
Let me correct this. On this layout, because he's going to have all of the turnouts are going to be ground throws.
Right.
There's no tortoises
on
this layout.
Which adds to the prototypical running of the trains.
That's it. What I tell people, what I tell my clients, there's 2 things that you cannot duplicate in model railroading when you're designing track plans or you're running railroads. You cannot duplicate time or distance.
Right.
There. The best you can do with time, like on a switching layout like this, is don't put tortoise switches on it. Make everything a hand throw, ground throw, because that slows people down.
Right.
And that's what you want to do. You want to slow people down is what you want to do.
John Arthur here makes a statement. He says, that's a similar size to my layout before I had to move it. He says, I ran a similar number of trains, and I'd say an op session was closer to 6 or 7 hours. It's amazing at prototypical speed how much your layout grows.
Absolutely. No question about that there. And that's why I'm so adamant about this prototypical stuff, because I'm a firm believer that if you design a railroad for rail fanning, I want to see if that railroad still exists in 10 years. If you design a railroad for operations, I know for a fact, because I operate on one out here in Colorado, the layout is approaching 40 years old.
Wow.
And it was converted from DC to DCC when DCC came out. That layout is exactly the same track plan as it was designed 40 years ago, but it was designed for operations as the focal point. Anywhere from 10 of us to 12 of us operate that layout once a month. And it's 40 years old. And it works today just as good as it did, 30, 35, 40 years ago. But again, it was designed and built for operations. It wasn't designed just to watch trains run around the room. Right. And again, I got to be careful, but there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want to do.
Okay.
But I know that those type of layouts don't stick around as long as the ones that are designed for operations.
Right. I hear you.
Okay. Here's where the storage thing came in, which I thought he did an excellent job on that. He built this storage underneath there because, again, this is a small house. He didn't have a lot of room and that. And this is even a better picture of that I-beam front there where all the electrical stuff's going to come from. The neat thing about that is all you got to do is unscrew the fascia if he ever needs to get in there to work on anything. It's real simple to get into that channel area and do work. And then, as you see on the staging caddy, he's put wheels on that, so he can unhook that from the main layout. And he even talked to me. He's even thinking about building another caddy, the same one, and now having 2 caddies with 6 trains, 3 trains on each caddy. I said, yeah, if you do that, you've gone from running 6 or 7 trains to running 12 or 13 trains during an op session. And that,
right.
So he's kind of he was thinking about doing that, which I think is kind of a neat idea. There it is with all the fascia on, the painted, everything ready to go there. And as you see, he's starting to lay track up on top there now on it. I think he did a great job on this thing from a bench work perspective. I think he did very, very good. There's the caddy in front of the window there. One of the problems I always had was getting tight seams in my corners on my fascias. He got that figured out real well. If I blew that picture up, you'd be amazed at how tight those seams are. Picture on the right shows the escape caddy not attached there. I'm just going to go through 2 or 3 pictures here showing you how this was built and done. I think the reason he drilled the 8 holes in there was to take some of the weight out of it. Plus, it looks good.
It does. Looks kind of like a bridge.
Yeah. The one thing I've never asked him about, and I haven't been able to figure out, is if he's connecting that to the wall where the closet is there, or if he's got it. I think he's got it designed on the hinge side well enough that it doesn't need to be supported at the tail end there. And we'll show a picture of that here in a second there. But this shows the hinges, and then that nut and washer that is there. I think there's one on the other side of that also. So when that closes, I think there's 2 wing nuts and that tighten that up. And if he's got the good hinges and he's got those wing nuts that'll get tightened up, probably doesn't need anything at the other end of this escape caddy. Or I think he's probably okay.
Yeah, if I could go back to the tight seam on the fascia board.
Sure.
Yeah, right there. Some of our members here, our community guys, Eminem says, I use putty to fill many untight seams. And John Arthur says, cans and cans of putty. Cans and cans of putty.
That's true.
But my usual thing is when someone comes into the layout and says, these seams don't match, they're like, you're really like a ½ inch off on that seam. I said, here's your coat. There's the door. Have a nice night.
That's right. It's my railroad.
It's my railroad. I know I didn't get that seams, but look at this layout. Look at this train running flawlessly across the track.
Yeah.
Don't forget that derailment in the back. Don't worry about it.
What I've learned in doing this business is the person that takes this kind of time, this kind of effort to build the bench work, he's going to do fine with the track.
He'll no doubt about it. No doubt about it.
That's right. Okay.
This guy's a Rhodes Scholar compared to me.
he does nice work, Billy. I'm telling you that. He does really, really good work. Okay, this is not the last picture, but it's the last picture in this series here. And what I told him to do when he started laying track, because he was a little confused as to where he should start laying track. Well, he's printing this track plan out 1-to-1. So he's got 1-to-1 prints of it there. And I told him to start at these 2 curved turnouts here. And I says, get the curved turnouts in, get them correct and everything. He's still got 1 curve to put in there. But I says, this is a critical spot on this track plan. Get this right and everything else will come together without much problem. So These are this is the last pictures I have gotten from him on this, and I honestly don't know how far along he is beyond this here, but I assume these pictures are about 4 or 5 months old. So I'm assuming
what's the gentleman's name?
Shepard is his name.
Shepard. So when you talk to Shepard, tell him that you were on the show. Tell him to look at the show and tell him from us that we think he's doing an excellent job.
I will tell him.
And you did an excellent job of designing this layout. I mean, really detailed.
I wanted to show this one because to a certain extent it's somewhat simple, but there are some complicated areas to it that not every switching layout is just easy to, you just start laying track down, see what happens. Okay. The next show I'm going to do is we're going to do kind of a 180 here. We're going to go from a very simple shelf layout to this layout.
My nipples are getting hard.
This is a layout. A gentleman that lives in Vermont. He owns a cabinet making company. There, he builds cabinets and a lot of commercial cabinets, and he does some residential too, but mainly he does commercial cabinets for different types of business, doctors' offices, different things like that.
Right.
He contacted me and he said, I've got a house here in Vermont. It's an old farmhouse, and I've got a basement that I would like to put a layout in. And so we kind of figured out what we were going to try to do here and what he wanted, because he wants this layout to depict northern Vermont. And this whole layout is designed around northern Vermont. It's 24. Go ahead.
No, I just want to interrupt you for a minute because we're getting a lot of questions in here, and I don't want to lose these guys because they maybe have to get to bed or something. But where is he? Mike Becker. Yes. Will this be reposted? Yes. You can go onto YouTube channel and look under Model Railroading Live, and you will see this archived, as well as all our other shows, because we at Model Railroading Live are the #1 model railroading site and video content provider in the universe. And what's Bill's website? It's www.trackplanet.com. TheTrackPlanet.com.
Right.
And there we have it listed. If you guys in the control booth could scroll that along the bottom. I guess you can't because he's sharing, but maybe. Oh, there you go. Look at that. I speak, they listen, it done. My God, the power I have.
You do.
So this is this guy wants it to look like northern Vermont, and it's a 24 by 20.
It's going to be a walk along. It's 3 decks. There's lower staging underneath here that you're not seeing in this picture. Above this is the main level. Above this is a second level, a third level, like if you count staging, and that takes up almost exactly the same space as this level takes, and that's the branch line. That's all. It's all the upper level is strictly a branch line operations there. So this layout turned out really, really good. I was real happy with how this, because it was fairly complicated, and we had 3 levels to deal with, helixes and all that kind of stuff.
Is this an HO?
This is HO scale. The fact that this gentleman is a cabinet maker, that's what he does for a living. In the next show, you will see bench work that is considerably better than most of the furniture in my house.
I believe it, brother.
This gentleman is doing a fabulous job building the bench work, and he's come up with ways to build this bench work that I would have never thought of in a million years. And one of the tricks with this happened, if you look at this picture here, you'll see 3 gray dots in the middle of the aisles. Those are support posts that hold the upper level of the house up there. And there were 6 of those on this layout in this basement that we had to work around on that. And that's why you see those in the middle. I couldn't design it the way we wanted it to be and hide those in the peninsulas.
Yeah, let's not give too much away here, Bill. Let's just whet the appetite so they'll come back.
I think this will whet the appetite enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
And with this gentleman, I probably have 24 photographs of the bench work that he built, and plus the wiring that he's been doing on it. And I think you guys will enjoy this. There's some down in the lower right hand corner is where the helix is. I've got a way of designing helixes to where you can use one staging yard for both ends of the layout. You don't have to have two staging yards. And I'll explain all that as I do the program.
Oh man!
And as they say, that's all, folks.
That's that's all, folks.
I will happy to take more questions if anybody has any.
Sure. I want late night model railroad says I want my future layout bench work to be fine cabinets underneath. Derek Alexander says another fantastic show and a great guest for sure. Thank you, Derek. And please, guys, know for the fact that here on Model Railroading Live, we'll be on tomorrow night with Johnny's Train Talk Show, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. So you can talk about what you saw tonight on Johnny's Train Talk Show. And when is the next show? Good question, M&M Rails. We will be on next month. Is that correct, Bill?
Yeah, we'll do it next month. We're going to try and do them approximately every 4 weeks. Is what we're going to do. Like, here's a question that I have, everybody. Is this something you guys want to continue to see me do? Is this of, is this educational for you? Does this help you?
Okay, so we'll do like Jeopardy. Da 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 da. Great presentation, Bill. Is this something you guys would like to see in future? Yes, Grandpa Rails, that's one. There we go. Absolutely, Derek Anderson, with exclamation, exclamation, and exclamation point after it. Okay. Marty's Train Shed down under says another great show from the MRL crew. Mike Becker says yes, 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 yes.
Well, since we got more than 3, let's do the show. What do you say, Bill?
I was going to do it anyway, even if we got them all said no. Okay. We were going to do them. And Hallelujah Annie says, absolutely, Bill, absolutely.
Good.
Let's see. Late Night Model Railroading, he has a question. Will you be giving more track planning tips for those of us who want to take a stab at trying our hand at it before hiring you?
Sure. I'll be happy. What you can do is I probably, I would say 75 to 80% of the people I talk to, I do end up designing plans for them. But that means there's 20 or 25% of the people that I'm simply giving them information, and I have no problem doing that. I just don't want to leave the impression with people that I'm in this for the money and it's all about the money, because I'm 75 years old. I retired at 56 years old. I've been retired 21 years. Me doing this is not about the money. It's about educating people and giving them what I think is a workable plan.
I like that. Randall Ellis says, yeah, sure. Even though I probably will never, ever have a layout like those, it's still fun to learn about it.
Well, even if everybody picks up one little thing from these shows, that I've done my job. If you picked up one thing, I've done the job here.
Yeah.
If you're seriously thinking about getting into this design business and doing what I do, I will be more than happy to talk to you on the phone or via email, whatever you want to do, and I will give you the straight skivvy as to here's what you need to expect to happen, because there's some numerous things that happened to me that I never expected.
And that's very true.
The biggest one is the sheer number of emails and phone calls that go back and forth between me and a client. I would say on average, for an average track plan, it's at least 60 to 70 emails minimum.
Yeah, well, it's a customer service,
business. It is
business space for it, so it is. And the fact of the matter is, guys, if some of you may not be able to have a layout like that, your building skills, like the last guy from New Zealand, Shepard was his name.
Yeah, Shepard.
Right. You may not have that, but we all have some basic carpentry skills that we can build and do. But the other thing is to go back over Model Railroading Live. We had Freddie Kowalski, I forget his last name, Freddie K. He was on, and he did about the big layout on a small, getting a small layout operation. What's his name from down in Florida has a shelf layout. A couple of you guys out there have shelf layouts, and some of you guys don't have anything, but it can motivate you to do something instead of being a armchair, modeler, that you can get up and maybe do a small peninsula or a small switching layout. We have tons of those videos on archive. And John Arthur says, and those skills get better with practice. He's absolutely correct.
Correct. One of the things that I do,
Thomas Klamowski, yes, that's him. Tommy K.
One of the things that I do that sounds counterproductive for me, but I have probably told in the last 8 years at least a half a dozen people not to pay me to design a track plan, because they're so green and they're so new to the hobby. One of the things I suggest to them, the money that they're going to pay me, go buy Woodland Scenics Golden Valley kit and build it, and you'll get all the experience that you'll need with scenery, track laying, and all that. After you build it and you've had fun with it, then come back to me and talk to me about designing you a prototypical layout.
Right. And John Farrington is the other gentleman that I was talking about in Florida, the pilot. People, and Andy Crawford states, people can also buy a couple of modulars from one of the online sources, and you can have a very enjoyable layout, but in 18 or 10 or something, 18 by 10 feet. But you can also do the whatchamacallit. I've been seeing a lot on Facebook. A lot of guys are doing, the table tennis to start out with.
Absolutely.
And that's a good way. That's a good way to get, to get involved in the hobby.
I did it under protest, but I designed one layout for a gentleman who had a 4x8 layout, and he wanted to expand, but he didn't want to tear down his 4x8.
Right.
So I figured out a way to design a track plan for him that incorporated that 4x8 original layout he had.
Lloyd from MHO Junction said, I dealt with Bill and I would certainly deal with him again. And he has a pretty impressive layout, Lloyd.
Yeah, Lloyd is doing a very good job on his layout.
Absolutely.
It's great. He's doing great on it.
The good story about Lloyd was looking to buy a house, him and his wife. And if I remember correctly, because we had Lloyd on one of our earlier Who's Big Bill talking to, and he went and looked at this house, and he went into the basement. It was all empty. It had a fireplace in it, and it was a little too big. His wife wasn't too sure, and his wife said to him, "What would you do?" And the homeowner happened to be with them in the basement, and his wife asked, "What would you do with this basement?" And he said, "I'd build a train layout." And according to Lloyd, the man came over and hugged him and said, "That's what I wanted to do." So Lloyd bought the house and tore out the fireplace, and he built this magnificent layout. If you get a chance, you should go check him out on our channel. We had him earlier, a couple of years ago, and stuff.
Well, what's so impressive for me about Lloyd is when Lloyd built his first layout himself, and he was getting pretty frustrated. And then I can't remember if I contacted him. He got a hold of me. But from the point of when I started to help Lloyd to where he is today with that layout, he has grown so much in this hobby. And
sure.
He's one of my favorites as far as you're taking somebody who, didn't really know that much about railroads and operation.
Yeah, he was pretty new to it.
He was pretty green.
Yeah,
and
he was.
Boy, I'm very impressed with how far he's come along over the last few years.
I believe he's going for his master modeler thing through the NMRA. So
great, good.
It says here, Randall Ellis says, "This is my biggest fear, Mr. Baranek, was if I ever did expand my layout, I would essentially have to ditch my 4x8 table. Glad there's a way to incorporate it into a larger layout."
Yeah. Now understand that I did not create the best design, because I was working with something he had already done. And same thing as he just said there, he didn't want to tear it down. My personal feeling on that is you're limiting your choices if you get into that mode of I'm not going to tear it down. There, if you, all you got to do is talk to Derek Glass, because that was one of the things Derek said to me when we first started. I'm not tearing down what I've got, and I just told Derek, that's fine. Let me do something, and you decide what to do. And after Derek seen what I came up with, he decided, yeah, maybe I should tear it down. And the bottom line is, when you tear it down, you don't waste a whole lot. You can still use the lumber, you can still use the wood. Depending on how you laid the track, you can usually save the turnouts. And that,
Mhm.
so it's not a total loss by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah, you think about you have a lot of work in it, but I think of that as education. That's
Yeah,
just paying your dues.
I agree with you. I agree
Well,
100%.
Bill, you're the great example. Look at you. We completely redid that whole peninsula for you.
Yes, you did. You did. Well, actually, you did the peninsula, and then we also changed out the behind us here. We changed out the staging yard,
Yeah.
and we changed the peninsula. Used to, I don't know if you guys can see it, but that's the original track plan up there. When Mr. Baronic designed this track plan, I asked him to print the finished product out for me, and I had him sign it. Bill Baronic, and he put the date. I believe it was 1/9/2015. So this
Whoa.
is 7 years old. This layout.
I'm a lot better now than I was then.
Well, thanks. I should get it. I'll tear it all out and do it all over again. You know.
Yeah, we could do better maybe next time.
Yeah, now let's just tear it all down. I'll try to explain it to my wife, But yeah, so we used to have if you could see, the center peninsula was rounded towards the end. We decided to change it. We had a view block in the middle, and then over here and behind me we had a 4-track staging yard. But then we changed it and made a barge scene, and we actually got more trackage out of it with the barge and the thing. So this is morphed into another thing, and we got a lot more operation involved in the peninsula.
I always tell my clients, if you build it exactly the way I designed it, I screwed up something.
Exactly. And that and I have to say that I would get into a place and I'd be like, and I'd call Bill up and I'd say, Bill, I don't know if this is, and he'd say, Bill, it's your layout. Do whatever you want. You want to change it,
Right.
Just do it. When we first did this, I always go back to the story. My friend Darren Brady he's a carpenter. He's actually a master carpenter. He's like that guy who does the cabinets. And I asked for his assistance because, I'm not that, I mean, I know how to put a nail in a piece of wood, but he knows his business. So when he came over here and he looked at it and he was examining the plan, he said, okay, this is what I want you to do. Go get 25 10-foot 8x2x4s. And I said, well, this isn't a 2x4. We need 1x3s. He goes, no, you need 2x4s because you're a big guy and you're going to lean on it. And I said, so then we called Mr. Baronic up. Mr. Baronic got on the phone, and Darren has a colorful way of explaining himself. And he said to Mr. Baronic, well, he needs 2x4s. And Mr. Baronic said, no, he needs 1x3s. You just got to get 1x3s. And he said, no, you don't know Bill. If you ever seen him, he's a 6'2". It's like 300 pounds. He might break it, when he leans on it. And Mr. Baronic said, he's not parking his truck on it. He's just running trains on it. So then after we hung up, he said, okay, go get 50 1x3s. And we started building the layout and we started coming around, and Darren stopped what he was doing in the mid build. And he said, this guy knows what he's talking about. And he now is one of the guys that comes over and knows nothing about trains, but he brings his grandson over, and we have a special Bachmann train that we allow him to run right off the layout, literally run it right off the layout. Bill, I want to thank you very much for being on. And the next show, we're going to post that date for you guys, and we're going to want you to come in and tune on. I hope this wet your whistle, got your appetite all revved up, and you'll be ready to go for the next installment. We have 3 that we're going to do, and the success of it, we may turn it in and have an extra one. But for right now, we have one that's coming next month. We'll provide that date pretty soon. You can watch us on Facebook. We're on Facebook at Model Railroading Live. So follow us on there, and also subscribe to our channel. I never say this, but I should. Subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and the notification, so you'll always be notified of it. Also, I have to pass this along. Last year we got into Patreon, and we'd really appreciate it if you guys could contribute to Patreon. Any amount you want, from $1 to $1 million, it would be great. But we do have a Patreon page, and we want to keep this thing going. And there's things that we need to do, pay for the subscription for Model. None of it goes to us. We do this for absolutely free. And but if you want, try to do Patreon. And before I leave you guys, just to let you know, Midwest Model Railroading Hobby Shop, they don't sponsor us. Not that we don't want them to, but they don't. But I have a code. It's SBK, South Brooklyn SBK RR, SBK RR. If you put that in their code, if you're going to buy anything from Midwest, they give you a 5% discount. And that's from us to you, because that's the kind of hairpin guys we are. Tomorrow, we're going to have Johnny's Train Talk Show, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. If you want, you can continue this conversation on that. We have a link where you can join in the chat if you have a camera, and be a part of the show. Mike Becker, thank you so much for joining. Derek Alexander, this may be your first time in. Please, welcome to the club. Welcome. Come on in. And just for you guys to know that afterwards on whereby.com, Model Railroading Live, we do a little informal gathering of model railroaders. Not like this. It's private, but you guys can go in. It's on whereby.com, Model Railroading Live. Okay, you can join in. It usually starts about now and goes to about maybe 1, 2 in the morning. If you guys, it's good on the weekends. We get a lot more on the weekends, but join in, because we get Ralph Renzetti, the Mudfather, the weathering guy. We get Andy Crawford, the modular guy. We got Robert Hulleman in there that gives us good advice on his layout. And you can actually talk to these guys now. These are the guys that do the Railroad Empire thing in the show, and you can talk to them and ask them. And he said, I wanted to give $2 million, but Bill said we had to limit it to $1 million. I didn't say it was $1 to $1 million. If you want to give more than that, by all means, And Derek Alexander, I'm sorry. Ouch, been here many times and long-time subscriber. My apologies to you, Derek. This is the first time I've seen you in the chat here. So my apologies to you, and thank you for being a long-time subscriber. It's greatly appreciated. And that's going to be it for us right now. We'll post again when Who's Big Bill Talking To. That's another one of our shows. And no, Mike Becker, it's whereby.com, Model Railroading Live. Okay, that's it from us. I just want to wish you guys a good evening, a good day. Be well, be safe, but most of all, be blessed, and we will see you on the radio. Thank you to John and Ari for their production assistance, and again to Bill Baronic, the track planner. God bless, guys.